This is an NVIDIA HGX H200 8-GPU assembly. In the H200 generation, Hopper gets up to 141 gigabytes of memory per GPU for over 1.1 terabytes of memory total. It costs about as much as a base model Ferrari, and today we're going to take a look at this in the Aivres KR6288 server. So let's get to it. Hey guys, this is Patrick from STH, and today we're going to do something that I've wanted to do for a long time, and it is going to be super awesome. It all started when Aivres sent their new KR6288 8-GPU server to the STH lab, and my team and I were talking about it, and one of the things that we just frankly got into was the fact that a lot of folks talk about these GPU servers these days because they're like the hottest thing in tech right now. But at the other hand, we've been testing the 8-GPU servers since, well, the Pascal generation of P100 servers, and even before that when there were 8-GPU servers out there and 10-GPU servers, single root, dual root servers, why that mattered, and all that kind of stuff way back in 2016, 2017. My thought was, why don't we take this new generation, the H200 generation, and really go through all of the differences, like what all the different parts are, why they are that way, some of the ways that they've evolved over time, so that way just folks have that kind of baseline understanding. Something my team let me know was that I just kind of know this stuff because we've been doing it for so long, and I just kind of assume everybody else knows, and that's not necessarily the case. And now that there are so many more folks interested in GPU server reviews and GPU servers in general, I figured, well, why don't we go and really do a little masterclass on what a GPU server is. And you might be wondering who Aivres is. Just to kind of give you an idea, they're a kind of newer California-based server manufacturer. But this building right here that's on their Contact Us page, if you look at the address, it's actually, I think, the old LSI building that's like right behind the Cisco campus. And if you're in the Silicon Valley, you know exactly where this is because you go down the street and you go to one of the first in and outs in the Silicon Valley. Now, of course, Aivres has a huge set of AI servers that they make. This is really kind of their flagship model right now, and so that's why we're looking at this one. Now, of course, I have to say that this is sponsored by Aivres because, well, they sent us this giant server that costs like Ferrari money, and frankly, we didn't buy it ourselves because we can't afford to buy a couple $100,000 server to go do a video, so we need people to send them to us. Of course, if you're wondering, yes, it is going back to them after we're done with this, and it's probably going to take us a couple of hours to go and crate back up. And I'm going to show you as much as I can in a video like this, but if you have other things you want to learn about, like AI servers, ask like why a server is built the way it is, feel free to go put those in the comments. Maybe we'll go do an STH main site article, or they'll come in other videos in the future. But with that, let's get to the hardware on the second set. So this is the KR6288, and this is a giant AI server. I've taken the NVIDIA HGX H200 8-GPU assembly out of here, and we also have the main server that houses this beast. Make no mistake, this is the heart of the server, and this is really why folks want a server like this in the first place. This entire board that you see in here is manufactured by NVIDIA. Underneath these giant air-cooled heat sinks are the NVIDIA H200 GPUs. These are Hopper generation GPUs, and the big thing that's different between the H100 and H200 is the use of 141 gigabytes of HBM3E memory. Now, 141 might seem a little strange. You might say, well, if I just kind of look at how many HBM packages there are, like I should have like 144 gigabytes, and you should, but what NVIDIA actually does, which is really smart on these GPUs, is they take a little tiny bit of one of the HBM controllers on every GPU that they make, and they just kind of deactivate it. So that way, for yield reasons, when they're assembling these giant scarce GPUs, from a yield perspective, by making it 141 versus 144 gigabytes, it turns out that they have a much easier time getting useful chips. So that's actually why it's 141 gigabytes per. And what that practically means is that this assembly is designed to expose over 1.1 terabytes of HBM3E memory to the 8-GPUs. Now, all of these 8-GPUs are linked using NVLink. Now, NVLink is one of the innovations that NVIDIA has that you don't really see on things like AMD GPU servers. And what it is it's a high-speed interconnect between all of the GPUs. And it's not just a point-to-point interconnect. Instead, you'll see that over here, we actually have the 4 heat sinks for the NVLink switches. So there are 4 switch chips that are very high-performance switch chips on this board, and that's another part of what NVIDIA is selling with this HGX H200 platform. Now, the NVLink switches on the side, that's something from Hopper and earlier generations. Blackwell HGX platforms will have the 2 instead of 4 NVLink switches in the middle of the board, and that kind of makes it shorter for the traces because they're doing this at such high frequency. Now that's what the extra heatsinks are on that side. On this side, you're gonna see a couple extra heatsinks. Usually those are things like the Astera Labs PCIe retimers. We did take off the heatsinks because I am not breaking something that costs us much. Now to ensure that you have proper airflow through the HGX H200 platform, you have this airflow guide, similar to what we see on the CPU side in most servers, but you have that in this tray. Then you have a little cover that goes over that, and that makes everything nice and tight, where you can then put it into the front of the server. A big difference between the KR6288 and some swell options out there is that you don't actually have to go and take apart the entire system, pull it out of the rack to be able to service this module. GPUs can fail, so you do need to service or be able to service modules in a system like this. And this one, you can leave the system in the rack and you just pull out the entire GPU tray. That is the correct way to make a system. There are other vendors that make things that are maybe swell, but are absolutely horrible when it comes to service. Now I'm gonna leave the cover off because it's just so much cooler to see the actual GPUs rather than a piece of sheet metal, guys. But we're just gonna talk about the rest of the things that you're gonna see on the front. The big one, of course, is that we get 8 2.5-inch NVMe bays. Now, AI servers tend to have really high performance storage that sits in clusters just because data sets can be many petabytes big, sometimes exabytes. And often what we see is that folks use the network storage as kind of that capacity tier, but then when you get inside the server, the idea is to get the fast SSDs that may be a little bit smaller. The rest of the front of the chassis though is designed for airflow. Now there are actually 2 sets of fans in this, and I have the cover still here, but there's actually a fan partition, much like you would see on a 2U server. There's a fan partition for the CPU and NIC portion of this, which is really that top portion. The bottom portion, we'll show you when we get to the back, has these very, very large fans, but there is a fan partition here. Now behind the fan partition, which sits here, we have our CPU and memory. Now this particular system is a 4th and 5th generation Intel Xeon scalable system. So that's Sapphire Rapids and Emerald Rapids if you're keeping count. We're gonna see next generation systems either use Granite Rapids AP, which has already been launched, or the Granite Rapids SP, which has not been launched. But one of the advantages of using an SP platform is the fact that you get, because you have a smaller socket, you get a total of 16 DIMMs per CPU, or 32 DIMMs total, which allows you to hit a higher memory capacity. And by having that much HBM3E memory, it practically means that you want at least a 1-to-1 ratio, but most people are more like 2 or 3 to 1, if not a little bit more in terms of system memory to GPU memory. So that's why even though you could get 12-channel memory and higher memory bandwidth, we see a lot of people use these 8-channel memory and 2 DIMM per channel systems because you just get more DIMM slots to get that memory capacity. Now, something that you're gonna notice in this whole area is, frankly, that there is a lot going on. You're gonna see cables, MCIO cables, going from the front of the motherboard all the way back to the back of the system. And the reason for that is PCIe Gen 5, you don't really get very long trace lengths in PCB, and you get much longer if you're using a cable. So that's why the designers of these systems tend to either have some pretty elaborate designs to get the signal to the back of the motherboard, or they just use cables and they can use a standard motherboard. And the other thing you've probably noticed at this point is that we have giant red and black power cables in this because this thing uses a ton of power. And in the middle, there's also a little M.2 riser. So if you want to go put your M.2 drives in there for boot, so that way you can use your front panel 2.5-inch bays for things that are, like high-speed data drives, then you can totally go do that as well. Now this back section is perhaps one of the most important and one of the most different areas of a server of this generation from previous generations. So the first thing you'll notice is that we have PCIe switches, and we use these PCIe switches because, frankly, you have 9 NICs in here and high-speed NICs that do 400 gigabits per second each. Plus, you have 8 GPUs over here, and so just that, 17 PCIe devices that are all PCIe Gen 5 by 16, that's too many lanes. Plus, we have all the storage and stuff like that in this. I mean, it's obviously too much, so we have PCIe switches. It also allows for things like the GPUs to communicate to the NICs without having to go all the way to the CPU. So there's a practical reason for using these types of switches as well. Now, one of the biggest changes, something that you're gonna see here displayed in all of its glory, there's a total of 3.6 terabits per second of networking coming out of the back of this box. And that doesn't even include the onboard NIC or the management NIC, because those are just rounding errors at this point. Each one of these cards is a 400 gigabit card. And there are a total of 8 of the cards, which are NVIDIA ConnectX 7 cards, which can do either 400 gig Ethernet or InfiniBand, depending on which versions you get, and some of them can do both. Now, we've also shown in large Ethernet-based AI clusters, the solution that most folks will end up using is probably the NVIDIA BlueField 3 SuperNIC DPU, or whatever they're calling it these days. That's more of the one that is really for kind of like the scale-out, east-west, 400 gig Ethernet networking, right? So like if that's what you're doing in your data center, you're probably using that. Now, if you're using InfiniBand, ConnectX 7 is definitely the way that you're gonna go. And if you're wondering why we have 8 400 gig NICs, it's because each GPU needs 1 NIC. In previous generations of servers, like if you were to go back to like a V100 server or maybe a P100 server or something like that, you might see a 8 GPU server that has maybe 2 NICs, maybe 4, some of them. But nowadays, you need a massive amount of bandwidth between the GPUs and all the other GPUs in a network. And so that's why each of these gets a PCIe Gen 5 by 16 400 gigabit NIC. And my absolute favorite stat to use on that is that this NIC alone has more bandwidth than all of the PCIe lanes on a first and second generation Intel Xeon scalable processor. Now, of course, you're gonna notice that we have one more NIC in the middle, but that's actually an NVIDIA BlueField 3 DPU. So it's kind of hard to see here. So this is what one of the BlueField 3 DPUs looks like. And what this does is a couple of really cool things. This is usually what people would call a north-south NIC, and that really goes between the CPUs and the rest of the cluster. That might deliver things like, it might deliver some storage to the CPUs. It's also the way that like CPUs communicate and get out to the network and all that kind of stuff. This thing can do crazy things, like they're gonna have the ability to like boot drives off of this, so you don't actually have to have those M.2 drives in your system, which is, I don't know, saves you $200-300, whatever that is. There's an out-of-band management interface, and this actually has 16 ARM cores built in, and it can run its own operating system. You can literally run Ubuntu on this card, and that's just sitting here in the middle of many of these AI servers. And on the back of the card, you're gonna see that we have two 200 gigabit cages, and that gives you your 400 gigabits. We have tons of stuff on NVIDIA BlueField on the STH main site, and we're gonna continue to have more in the future, so go check that out. Okay, now getting to the rear of the system, let's talk about a couple of things on this top section. First off, let's talk about the management situation. We have a management NIC. Of course, this has an out-of-band management thing. Something like 99+% of servers have out-of-band management. So of course this has it. There's also a VGA port, because this is kind of a fun thing here, is that although you have 8 GPUs on here and everybody asks, can you play Crysis and all that kind of stuff, turns out these actually don't have display outputs. So the only display output is through the ASpeed BMC, which kind of powers this little VGA port. So sure, you may have a 6-figure GPU board from NVIDIA here and over $10,000 of NVIDIA networking, but your GPU output is really limited to the onboard baseboard management controller's VGA output. There's also 2 USB ports in case you need to go and hook up a KVM card. And let me just be very clear. If you buy a giant GPU server like this, your goal in life should not be to go to the hot aisle and service stuff. And the reason for that is, if you have to go install like a KVM cart and sit there behind a wall of GPU servers, even if it's only like, maybe 4 in a rack, it's gonna be super hot, it's gonna be super loud. You're gonna need, like I personally used 2 different levels of ear protection when I'm behind these things, because it is crazy loud. And the reason that this is crazy loud is not really because of this fan partition for the top part of the server, it's really for the giant fans cooling the bottom part. This is one of the dual fan modules that goes in the back, and there's a total of 6 of these modules in the server. The job of these modules is to cool all of the NVIDIA GPUs in this whole HGX H200 platform. Now you might see the power supply, see 8 power supplies in the back of this and think, oh, they're all interchangeable, they're all about the same size, all that kind of stuff. But there is a big difference. 2 of the power supplies are the 12-volt power supplies. And the 12-volt power supplies are there to power this top part, the CPUs, the memory, the add-in cards, all that kind of stuff. That's using 12-volt power, kind of like you'd see in a normal server. But on the HGX H200 side, this is a 54-volt design. So instead of going from 12-volt power supplies to 54-volt and then powering, this whole board, what they do is they just have power supplies that go directly to 54-volt, and then they can feed this entire thing. This is something that we've really started to see only in the last couple of years. It used to be that all the power supplies were interchangeable, but that's no longer the case. And on the case side, there's something else that's kind of fun. Now, of course, on the front, you can pull out this, you can pull out the drives, all that kind of stuff. On the back, you can pull out the fans, the power supplies, but you can also pull out the NIC tray. And I bet you didn't know this, but these levers right here, once you undo them,
there's little slots here, and you can actually pull out this entire tray. So if this is sitting in a rack, this allows you to service the back NIC area without having to get the whole thing like up and out. So it's actually kind of a cool design. It's just one of the fun things that you get to see in these big servers.
Now, of course, to show a little bit of H100 versus H200, I want to just use some MLPerf benchmarks. Now, of course, one of the challenges with the MLPerf benchmarks is I think GPT-3 actually need more systems to be able to run it. NVIDIA rules the training side of MLPerf because they're the vast majority of submissions. And one of the ways they do that, which is actually kind of useful, is that they do publish their containers for all of the different OEMs, and they support the OEMs going and benchmarking their own systems. And we're just going to blast through the results because they're pretty redundant. I do want to just point out, though, that if you have older kind of benchmarks and older types of models where you really aren't using that extra memory bandwidth and an extra memory capacity, like BERT and stuff like that, then you weren't going to see a huge performance jump from the H100 to the H200 generation, especially if you're at the same TDP. And in case you're wondering, we did test the CPUs and NICs. They run at their normal speeds. We've already reviewed all that stuff, so no point really going over that again. But I do want to talk about power consumption because that's kind of important.
So let's talk about the power consumption here for a sec. You can easily get this thing going over 10 kilowatts on just a single server. It actually can go a little bit above that depending on the configurations and what workloads and stuff that you're running. Something that you need to keep in mind is that when you have a GPU server, it doesn't actually run, especially running training jobs and stuff, you don't actually see it run at 100% all the time. You're gonna see that the actual power consumption is a lot of times a little bit lower than that 10 kilowatts. Now, each of the SXM H200 GPUs can use something like 700 watts a pop, and they will actually use 700 watts if you let them. And there's also additional power consumption for the PCIe retimers. There's additional power consumption for the NVLink switches. And then when you get to the server, you have all of the fans that are in here, which is why people talk about liquid cooling saving so much. You can figure that maybe 15% or so of a server like this just the power will go to the fans. So it's actually quite a bit. And then, of course, you have your dual processors, you have 32 DIMMs, and then the NICs, Bluefield 3 can, I think, run up to 150 watts, which is why it has its own power connector. Plus you have another 8 NICs in here, which are the Connectix 7 NICs. There's also M.2 SSDs, there's 8 2.5-inch SSDs up there. There's a ton in this server that really means that this is gonna be a high power server. One thing though that is quite different with a GPU server versus a non-GPU server is that a huge portion of that load happens at a kind of weird frequency. And what I mean by that is that if you actually watch GPU power consumption when you're doing a training run or something like that, you'll see that the GPUs sit at very low, 0%, 1%, 2%, 3%, something like that, power consumption. And then you're gonna see that their utilization goes up. They hit that 100% mark. Maybe they don't get all the way up to 700 watts, maybe they do, but then they all spike and they all go up and then they all go down at the same time. And the weird thing for a data center is that it's not just happening on, say, these 5.4-ish kilowatts of GPUs, it's happening across many of these systems. And so there are huge power fluctuations in a data center due to that really data centers of old with CPU servers are not really designed to handle with that frequency. It's just as people build these giant AI clusters, they're running into challenges just like that. With that, I think it's time to get to our key lessons learned.
So with all our videos, I like to have key lessons learned. What did we learn from doing a big system review like this? I think my big thing is I just hope that everybody here really got to go through the server with me, go through that hardware overview and just kind of learn why some of these things are the way they are. I know there's a lot more to it. We didn't really get into why you have a single root versus a dual root server. That's something that you can definitely find on the STH main site. We have a pretty big archive of all that kind of stuff. At the same time, I think that the KR6288 is a pretty nice server. It's actually quite serviceable. They have those things like the front GPU tray that you can just pop out. You don't have to take the entire chassis out to go get to it. You also have the IO cards. Something that tends to fail a lot also in these kind of servers is actually the optics. And so being able to switch either a NIC out or an optic out easily is kind of nice, and having that extra little tray that's removable from the back is kind of nice little feature. But also if you guys have ideas on things that you want to know about the hardware and how these things work, maybe why things are the way they are, put them down in the comments. Maybe we'll have a STH main site article on it. With that, I hope you liked this video, and if you did, well, why don't you share it with your friends and colleagues, especially so they can learn about GPU servers, but also give it a like, click subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you can see whenever we come out with great new videos. As always, thanks for watching. Have an awesome day.